Hi. Um, Welcome to my channel once again. In this project, we are going to build something quite interesting. First of all, let me show you what it's going to look like. Let me run this application. Let me run it. So the interface is going to look like this. So what we are going to use this to do is basically this is something that we could use as an inventory system to record our information. So the user should be able to add, display, update, delete, and search for inventories. And the most important, probably another most important part of this application is that the user should be able to persist the information to a database. So the database I'm going to use here is Postgres. So you could use MySQL or other kinds of data, any other kind of database. So the user should be able to manipulate the information saved in the database. And so we are going to start writing our code now. The first thing we need to import is, let me first of all type it down. Import, so yeah, that's the one. We need to import this, and this is Postgres database adapter, which we will use to persist our information to the database. So once we import it, in order to use it, it needs to be installed. So we use pip install. Let me just copy this and paste. So this is very important. It's already requirement already satisfied, which means it's already installed. So that's good. So now that we have this, we need to start writing code. The first thing we need to write is the class, which we are going to use to define the variables or the attributes of the items we are going to add to our inventory. So we need to first of all define the class. Let's call it inventory. Uh, Inventory. Then let's define the init function. Define the init functions. So now let's find what attributes we need. So the attributes, let's say name. Um, let's also, before that, let's add ID. This will be useful when we want to manipulate the information in the database. So we have the ID, we have name, we have producer. So this will be the producer of the item. We have a model, we have a status. This status basically specifies if it is new or used. That's what we will use it. We will use it for. So now let us oh, serve that ID. We are going to define all of these attributes. Serve that name. We also have self dot producer. We have self dot model. We have oh, I missed this one. Producer. We have self dot status. So those are the attributes. I think I probably need to maybe make this a bit smaller so that we have enough room for other things. So let me quickly preferences, setting, that's font size. Let's reduce it to probably 16. Yeah, I think it's better this way. Okay, so now we're going to write the string function, which we will use to for better representation or presentation of these attributes. So let me define this string, and we're going to call all of these attributes again here. So what this does is that when we start to create our objects, this makes it kind of prints these attributes in readable format. So let us return. It will be a good idea to format this. And let's say ID. ID, we should have a self dot ID. And it would be a good idea to kind of create new line. And the next thing we have is the next thing you know what? Let me just quickly copy all of these things so that I don't waste time trying to. We've got about okay, 6 of them. Got six. So we have ID here. We should have here name. We have name. Here we've got producer, producer, producer. Here we've got model, and the final thing we've got, let's see, model, and now we've got status. Here we go, status. And let's see, ID name producer, ID name producer, model status. So this we do not need. So probably this is not important. So this is what we need in order to proceed. So the next thing we need to do now is to create a class for our database. In order to do that, let's create class. Let me call it database. And then we need to initialize it with init function. So we give it one attribute, which is connection. So here we can say self.connection, connection. What else do we need? Now, we are going to start adding information to our database. After that, we are going to create the database table and also create and then connect to the database. So first of all, we are going to start adding the information to the database. So we are going to start by probably create a function called add, what do I call it? Add inventory. Add inventory, let's call it that. So here we are going to have self. and then name, and what comes next? We have name, we've got producer, those who produce the item, we've got model, and we got status. So those are the four attributes that we have listed there. So now we are going to query the database. Query, that should be query. Insert into table. Let's call the table, what do I call it? Let's call it inventory. Inventory DB. Let me call it that. Inventory table. This is quite a very long name. Inventory table. Now we are going to list all of these attributes. We are going to list them inside there. Let me reduce the size, the length of this invent table. I think that's good enough. Name, producer module, status, then the values to be assigned. For the values, they should be values with S. For the values, we need to create placeholders for them. There are four of them. We create placeholders returning ID. So this is the command we will use to add this information to our database. So the next thing we need to do now is to try connection to the database. In this case, we say with self connection cursor. No, that's cursor. Execute query. So we're executing this query now. So that's why we're using this variable. So here we have query, then we list all of these things that we are adding into the database. Insert inventory, insert ID. Cursor dot fetch one. So what I'm trying to do now is to, once it is added, I want to fetch whatever is added to the database and then write it out to the user in order to confirm that that it was successfully added. So self dot connection. We are going to commit. We're going to commit it, commit the information, and then print. Let me format this. Let's say item with ID of uh, this should be insert. Item with ID of insert ID has been added to the database. So once it is added to the database after committing, we are going to write it out to inform the user that this item has been added to the database. So that's what this does. The next thing we are going to write now is the display inventory. So this is a function that a user could use to display all the information that is already in the database. So in order to do that, we are going to start by querying the database as we did. The name should be display inventory. We are also going to have self. And then let's use query again. And then we use select because now we are selecting everything in the database from the table. The table name invent table. That's the name of the table. So we're going to fetch what is in the database. Once this is fetched, we're going to write almost the same thing we did earlier. Let me just copy this. So I'm going to copy this, and then we are going to execute. Execute the command. Then here we are going to add a query again. So now let's create a variable where we are going to add all the information fetched from the database. So here we are going to cursor dot fetch all. We are going to use fetch all because now we are fetching everything in the database. So now let's see if items. Let's see if items exist for sure. Then we print because the items exist. We are going to print probably let's say here existing items in the database. And then now let us look through the items. For item in items, we are going to look through them. For item in items, let's print. So we fetch all the items, assign them there, then we check if there are items. If there are items, we print this out to the user as a header, just like a heading, and then we look through the items, then print, what's the name? Inventory, that's the name of this. So print inventory, and item. So let me copy this. I'm going to explain what we are doing. Let's say so we are looking through the items, and then all the information are going to be distributed into these indexes. So the first index will be the ID. The second index would be, where is it? Second index is going to be name. That will be second index. Third one is going to be producer. That will be the third one. Remember, the index starts from 0. So the next one is going to be model, which is 4. The next one is going to be 0, 1. Oh, this is 2, 3, 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 plus the ID. So this is what we should have. Let me see where we are having the, let's see. It says class inventory any. Let's see. Print. Uh, let's see. There should be that. That should be that. And that. Okay, that's what the error was. So that's what it should be. So what if nothing exists in the database when we issue the command? So in that case, we could say else. Okay, no. In this case, we could say print. Oh, we could say nothing exists in the database. So this is what we will use to display all the information we've got in the database. So now let's write the function for to update information in the database. To do that, let's define the function update. Wait a moment. In inventory. Okay. Let's say update inventory. So it's going to have self as well. Update inventory. Oh, it also requires ID. Let's call it invent ID. So this is because in order to update any of our objects, we need to use we need to also type in the ID of the object in the database in order to identify what ID we want to update. So it is important to also add the to add this ID, and then that's the first thing that we need. We also need the information that we need to update. For instance, let's say we want to update the name. So we can say new name, new name. Let me see. Let me just copy this. So we are going to have we have ID. We should have new name, new producer, new model, a new status. So now we are going to execute our query. So what we are going to do, let's say query update, update. The name of our table is, let's copy the name of the table. Oh, update this table, set, set name. We're going to use placeholders here because these are the things we want to change. We have a change name. We have the next thing we have is producer, producer, another placeholder. The next thing is model, placeholder, and the final thing is status and another placeholder. where ID placeholder again, right? So we're going to update our table set name to the new name, producer, model, status, where the ID is this placeholder. So now we're going to start execution. Let me copy this because it's going to be the same. I copy this. So we start again, almost the same thing we did earlier. We have a query. Let's see. Oh, this should be cursor.execute query. And then now we are going to add the new information provided by the user. So that would be, let's see, that would be name. Let's say new name. Or let's start with the ID, invent ID, new name, new producer, new model, new status. So we're executing and adding all this information provided by the user. Let's see. So dot connection. Let's commit the information. If cursor. Now we're going to check if there exists this information that we are trying to update. It's important to make sure that it really exists or not. Cursor.row count. We check if it is greater than 0, which means it exists. Let's print, let's format item with the ID of uh, invent ID has been updated. What if the item doesn't exist? This will be else. We print, let's format, uh, no item with ID of invent ID exists in the database. So after executing our command, we first of all verify that the row count, if it really if it is greater than 0, which means it exists. Then the update is done, and we print out this information to the user. If it does not exist, we print out this information that it doesn't exist. So we still have about two functions to go. So the next function we are going to write is one we use to delete information in the database. So that one we can say we can define delete inventory and self. This one requires only one parameter. We can call it invent ID because in order to delete, you need to provide the ID. So now we can just execute our query again. Query, oh, we can say delete from our table name where where ID and placeholder. So we are delete from invent table where ID is the ID provided by the user. So we are going to, let me quickly copy this because it's the same, it's always the same. So let's copy this and then cursor dot execute. Let's execute. What do we want to execute? The query and then let's see the query and then the ID provided by the user, invent ID. That's what you want to execute. So now self dot connection, let's commit it, dot commit. Let's commit our command. So we are going to check also if it really exists, just the way, the same thing that we actually did there. So we are going to check if cursor dot row count is greater than 0. Let's print something out. Let's say the inventory with ID of invent ID has been deleted. If it does not exist, if the ID does not exist, we can just do the same. But we are going to negate it, obviously. We can say something like does not exist. And let's see. That's it for this one. That's all we needed. The next function we need, and probably the final function, would be one we could use to search for an item in the system. So what do we call it? We call it, we define it as search inventory. Search inventory, just like other functions, it has itself, and then it should have the ID. Let's call it search ID. So let's query just like others. Then select, we're going to select everything from our table name, where ID is the same as provided by the user. This is, yeah. Oh. So we are going to execute the same thing as before. We're going to use the same as this. So the next thing we need to do is to issue our query now. Cursor.execute query, and then the ID provided by the user, item. We are going to create this variable. After executing this query, we are going to assign whatever is found in the database. We are going to assign it into this item variable. So let's call a cursor.fetch, because we are searching for one item. We fetch one. And now let's check if the item really exists. If item, then let's print um, let's see how we're going to do this. Probably let's just return. We can just return the same thing as we did somewhere. Where is it? Let's copy this because we want all of this to be returned. So it's going to return the ID, the name, the producer, and all the attributes that we defined in our class. Otherwise, if it doesn't exist, return none if it does not exist. So these are the functions that we need. The next thing we're going to do now is to create our database, or rather to connect to our database and then start creating objects that we are going to persist to our database. The function we're going to create now is one that we use to create our table, the inventory, this very table. So let me copy this table and then we write our function. So another important thing to note is that this function is at the same level as the classes, not as these functions, but the same level as the classes that we created earlier. So let's define and let's create, what do I call it? Create maybe database table, connection, and let's wait, connection dot cursor, oh, cursor dot execute. This is almost the same thing as the same command as what we wrote earlier. So let's say, okay, so inside here we're going to write our code that creates the table. So let me start by let's find out if the table exists or not. Create table if not exists. Let's call our table, that's the name. So now we're going to define all our attributes. The first thing we need to do is to create a key, ID, like a primary ID. So to do that, let's say ID serial. So like I said, this is the primary key, very important. Then let's name our attributes. Varchar, that's the data type. Not null. It must be filled in. That's why we are having not null there. So the next thing, what is the next thing? So we have a name producer model. Name producer. So I'm going to have all of them, give all of them the same data type. Producer model. And the next thing we have is status. Status, we give it the same. So this is what we need. And let's see. So we are going to commit this command, connection.commit. So this is we create our table. The next thing we need to create now is the main function that we run our code. That's the next thing that we are going to create. So inside there, we are going to use it to connect to the database. So the database and the identification is also the same at the same level as this. So let's call it define it define it as main, and then let's try to connect to the database. Connection. So remember, this is important. It's important to import this because we're going to use it now, this adapter, to connect to our database. So it should go something like that, dot connect. So now host, because I have my database on this local, oh, what's that? I have my database on this local computer. I'm going to write here local database. This is empty. User for username. I'm going to use Postgres. The final thing password. I'm going to use what do I use? Let me use that for password. That's the password. So now, if we are able to connect to the database, we can say something like connection. Let me format it. We can say connection to the database has been established, except except uh, yeah exception as a print. Let's assume there was an issue with the connection. We can print something like uh, we could say something like unable to connect to the database. Unable to connect to the database. Return. So this we use to connect to our database. So I provided all the information, necessary information we need to connect to the database. If it connects, we're going to get that message. If it fails, we'll get that error message. So this we can try it when we start adding information to the database. So now we are going to make use of this database class that we created on top of we created here. So if you called yours something else, that's what you're going to use. I called mine database. So let's call this function. Where is it? Let's call this function, which we use to create our table. Uh, we can call it something. We can call it from here. Create database table connection. Then let's create some kind of object here of that database that I just pointed at up there. So here we have connection. Here we've got connection. So now we are going to start creating making it possible for the user to add information to the database. So in order to do that, I've created let me copy and paste this so that I do not waste time trying to type them all there. So I got this. So, oh, wait a moment. It has to be indented one step after while. That's the way it should be. After you have while through, it should be like this. So here we could say, let me just quickly copy this. Instead of items, this doesn't really matter, but let me just change all of this to item to inventory because we are adding inventory. So we need these things when the user, let's say, I don't know, we could just call this whatever, inventory shop or whatever you want, just like the header. Um, so now we have all of these things. When the user chooses option one, they will be able to create inventory. When the user chooses option two, they will be able to display all the inventory. That's what all of these things do. So now we are going to start to write the code. So we can say something like, let me say option, let me create this variable. And we can use here input to get information from the user. We could say something like, choose an option from 1 to 6, for example. So now we will start asking the user for information. Let's say if option that the user typed in is 1, we are using this one as a string. That's why it's inside the quotation mark. Otherwise, we could experience some kind of we could get error message or something depending on how you want to use it. So now, if the user chooses option one, we will start asking them for information what they want to type in. So in that case, we could say something like, let me see. So I just have this here. So this will be inventory name, add inventory name. Here we could say, what's the next thing? Inventory, we've got name producer model, producer, model. Finally, we've got the status. So this is the information we ask the user to fill in. Once it's filled in, we are going to call this object that we created, object of our database. We are going to call it and then add the information that the user added. So we're going to persist it to the database. So to do this, we call the object, and then we are going to call this function that we created for adding information to the database. So now we are going to start adding. Oh, by the way, this should be producer, producer, model, status. So we're going to start adding them to our database. Producer, model, finally status. Producer. So we have added all the information that the user provided. The next thing we're going to do is to check if the option chosen by the user is option 2. For option 2, it's display all the information we've got in the database. So this one will be probably the easiest one to write. So what we do here is we call our database object again, and then we call our display function. We call our display function. So that's all that we needed to do here. So now let's check if option 3. Here also this should be a string if the option is 3. For option 3, what we've got is update. So this one is going to take quite some time. So in order to do that, we are going to uh, let's say ID, because if you remember, when we wrote this function to update information, where is it? The user has to provide all of this information, update. So the new information, which we then persist. So let me just copy this. Oh, this shouldn't be there. Let me copy this. We are going to need all of this. Because first of all, the user provides the ID. Let's call it update ID. Let's say update ID. So for this ID obviously is an integer, the data type. Then input, provide a new name. We could have something like that. Oh, provide the ID, not new name yet. Provide provide item ID. We could say that. Here we could say, here we've got input. Provide a new name. We could have provide a new name. We ask for information about new producer. The next thing we have here is a new model. Input, provide a new model. The final thing is the status. Input. We say provide a new status. So after that, we're going to call our database object and then call our function update inventory. Then we are going to add all this new information provided by the user. So we start by update ID, new name, new name, new producer, new model, finally, new status. So now we have persisted this to the database. So we are going to write the rest of the options. So let's proceed and write the rest of the options. Also, we have else if option. If the option is 4, so now we are going to delete an item. So we are going to ask the user for the ID of the item they want deleted. So let's say we could say delete ID as a variable. So the ID is an integer. Then we ask the user for an input. So we could say something like provide an ID to delete. This would be also quite easy. So now let's say found ID. We are going to search to make sure that the ID exists. We check our database, dot, search, inventory, and then the ID provided by the user. So the user provides ID, which is an integer. We search for it in our database. If it is there, so it's not um, so let's see. Okay, yeah. So search. No, this is wrong. This should be delete inventory. So we call it delete. If it is there, which I think this is a different. Oh, wait a moment. So what we are going to do now is if option is 4, we are going to delete. So let's ask the user for an ID. The ID is going to be, we are going to assign the ID in the delete ID variable. Then we ask the user for the ID, which is an integer input. So we say provide an ID to delete. So, oh, we ask the user for the ID to delete. Once the user provides this ID, we are going to call our database object and we delete it. Delete inventory. Then what are we going to delete? The ID provided by the user. So that's how we're going to delete the ID. So the next thing is option 5. Else if option 5, if the option is 5, we are going to search. Here we are searching for an ID. So we ask the user for the ID and assign it in the search ID variable. So the ID is an integer input. Oh, a moment, let me start again. Input. So here we have a type and ID to search. So now we're searching if an item exists. Found ID. Let's assume because we are going to search, let's say db.search inventory, then the ID provided by the user, we search for it. So now, if we search for it in our database, if it exists, we assign it here. So now we are going to check, we assign it in the found ID. Now we're going to check if found ID, which means if it is true, if it exists. We are going to print something. We could just say print format inventory with the ID of the one provided by the user, uh, ID of found ID. Oh, let me complete this. Found ID has been was found. Was found. So if it's found, then we are going to print it out. Found ID. So the user provides the ID. Something is wrong here. This and that. So the user provides the ID. We search our database. If it exists, we assign the ID here. So we then verify that the ID really exists, and then we print it out. So if the ID does not exist, else let's say, what do we do? We print item with ID of search ID, the one provided by the user, search ID does not exist. So that's it. That's it. So the next thing is to terminate our application if the user doesn't search for anything. Probably we could just do something like, just to make it very simple, we could just say something like else. We could say something, we could say print, oh, print, no option has been chosen. In that case, we could just go on and terminate and exit the application. We could just exit the application. So that's all we needed. Now let's proceed and test our application. So let me run it. Let's go Python The name of the file is inventory. Oh, okay, inventory. I see. I hope there won't be any error message. Oh, okay. Let me try again. Oh, I just forgot something now. Remember that we created our main function here. This is what we use to run our application. So what we are going to do, we are going to call that main function right below here. So how do we call it? Let's say if name, let me use this, and let me make sure this is correct. Oh, here we should also, these are double underscores. These are double underscores. There is still, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it should be. Now we call our main function. I saved it. So let's call this again. Before that, let me clear the screen. Let's call it again. Could not translate host. Oh, that's a mistake. It should be local host and not local. Should be local host because I'm running this on the local machine. So, and let's try again. It says connection to database has been established. That's good. Later on, we are going to check our database to make sure that the table is created. And now we need to start choosing our options. First of all, obviously we don't have anything yet in the database. So let me try option two. Um, Remember, there should be a space here. This should be one through six. So I'm just trying option two. Let's see. It says nothing exists in the database, which is correct because we don't have anything in the database yet. Now let me try option. Let me try option four. Let's go option four. Option four. Let's see. Option four. We typed option four, and it asks. Let me. Oh, I should call the. I should call this yet first. So let's try option four. Provide an ID to delete. Let me just provide number five, ID five. The inventory with ID of five does not exist, which is correct. We don't have it yet. What else do I want to try? Let me try, that was option four. Let me try option five. Before that, we run applications. So option five, type an ID to search. Let me search for ID six. Item with ID of this does not exist. I should change this. Change this. So, but so far so good. The next thing we need to look for is did I try option four? I know I've tried option four. So the next thing we need to try now, let's try option three. We need to run our application first. Let's try, you know what? Let's start to add information to our database. But before I do that, let me quickly look for something here. Let me see. I need to change, not change, but I just want this to look better. So we could just add a space here. We could just add a space there. So the next thing is what's wrong? This search ID. So now let's try again. Let me save it. Probably let me exit. So I exited out of the application entirely. Let me run it again. So now let's try and add something to the database. Let's choose option one, type in an inventory. Let me say, router, producer. Let me say router was the producer to use. Let's say Cisco model. Let me just type anything. It doesn't matter. Model 5000. Status, let's say it's new. It says item with ID of one has been added to the database. Let's add something else. Late, and then let's go option one. The name, let's say firewall. Producer, let's say Palo Alto. And model, let's say Palo 1000. Status, let's say this one is used. The same item with ID of 2 has been added to the database. Now let's try and utilize other options. So now let's call our application once again, and let's use option 2 to display what we got in the database. Let's choose option 2. Yeah, that's it. We have ID number 1, we have router, we have a producer, we have, oh, this was not properly properly spaced, but we are going to fix that soon, probably. But that does not really matter. It's just statics. So we can just see that we added two items. We added firewall, we added Palo, we added all this information. We added firewall, we added router. So this one is working. So what we need to do now, we've use option 2 to display the items we got in the database. Let's search. Let's use option 5 to search. We are going to use now I need to call the application. So let's use option 5 to search. Option 5. Now let's search for ID2. Let's search for ID2. What did we find? ID2 inventory with ID. We have firewall. It displayed two times. Here is the firewall. Firewall, Palo Alto, this is this. We also have this here. So this one didn't work the way it should. I think it has to do with indentation, but we are going to fix it because there is only ID2, ID number 2. So we shouldn't have like, let me see, Palo Alto. Yeah. So this one appeared twice. So we're going to fix this. So the next thing we need to do now is let's choose, that was option 5 to search. Let's use choose option 3. Let's call application. Then option 3. Yep. Let's update Palo. This one is ID number 2, Palo Alto. Let's update ID 1. Let's update ID 1. So let's provide new name for ID 1. So here we could say AWS, Amazon Web Services. We could say provider Amazon, and we could say provide a new model. New model, we could just type anything. New 1000 status. We could say this is new. Um, we could say uh, we could say new, and that's it. So there is an error here. It says, let's see, that's line. Let's go to this line, line 40. Let's see what we've got there. Line 40. So here we've got ID, new name, new producer, new model, new status. And here we've got name, producer, model, status, where ID, that one. So let's try this. I was just looking at this because we've got here name, producer, model, and then we've got the ID uh, as the last entry here. So what we are going to do, let's change the position of ID, and then let's add it at the last position here, and then let's try again to update. First of all, let me clear this the screen, and let's try that again. First of all, let's check what we've got. Let's choose option 2. We've got these two entries. Run our application again. We wanted to change to update ID 1. So let's choose ID 1. No, first of all, let's choose option 3. Then ID 1. So we want to change Cisco from Cisco to whatever. So now I wanted to use out here AWS, producer Amazon. The next thing model, new model. The next thing status, let's say used. So it says item with the ID of 1 has been updated. So it's not updated. So now what we do, let us check if it's updated. Remember, initially we had where is it? We had a ID as router, Cisco, new. So now we are going to check what it is now. So we check search. Let's go 5. Type an ID to search. Let's search ID 1. So what is it now? ID 1 now is Amazon, new model. So it says status used, which is what we updated here, used. So now we are going to find, so it is working properly now. Everything seems to be working. Oh, by the way, let us try the last thing we haven't tried. Let me run the application again. And let us display the application again, option 2. Now let us delete probably ID number 2, which is firewall. So to do that, we are going to choose option 4. We want to delete ID2. Inventory with ID of 2 has been deleted. So let's check again. And display all inventory, which is option 2. We checked it. We see now we just have this one because we deleted ID number 2. So now we have only this one. So everything seems to be working. The only thing we need to check now is where is it? We need to find out why there is something that appears twice. Where is it? 2 here existing. There's something that appears twice. Oh, let me remember. Let me find out what it was. This this was was found. As was found. Interesting. Yeah. So option five, when we search for an ID, it displays two times. So we are going to find out why this happens, and then we are going to fix it. So before we do it, just to be sure, let's try again. Again, let's search option five. Remember that now we have only one item in the system. The one item we have now is where is it? After we deleted ID2, now we have ID1. So let us search for ID1. You see? So this is the actual thing, but we still have something at the top here. So this has to do with indentation. So let me quickly go up there and let's check the search function. Let's check the search function. Search is here. So let's see what happens when we search. So we say we search the database. If it is found, we print that inventory with the ID of found. Uh, ooh, ooh, ooh. This should be the ID that the user typed in. This should be the ID that the user typed in. So let's remove this. So the next thing we have this, we have that. So let us quickly try this again. So it would be option five. So let us try. We have only one item, search that. That's it. That's what it should be. So inventory with the ID of one was found, and that's what was displayed. Now, let us quickly take a look here. Maybe we need to reformat this. It is here. So we have here, let's allow some spaces. Let's just allow some spaces there. So let's save. Let's try again. Option five. Let's search for one. So that's what it should be. Name AWS producer, new model, and that's it. So now we have only one item in the database. So the next thing I'm going to do now, let us check the database. Now we are going to check our database to see how the table was created. So that's my database. I'm using the PG admin. So you're probably using the same, or you could use something else. But I like using this. I've been using it for a while now. So that's the database, and that's under this that I created it. So Postgres, schemas, and then tables. That's the database that we just created now, or rather the table that just got created. How many columns do we have? Let's check the columns. So that's the table, invent table. You see? So our table was successfully created. Those are the attributes. Um, so that works the way it was intended to work. So that's perfect. Another thing I wanted to point out is that sometimes when this table is created the way we did, sometimes if you had your database open or this very graphical interface, if you have it open, you probably need to close it and reopen it before you can see the table that got created. That's what I realized. So I hope you enjoyed this project and thank you for watching and try to subscribe to my channel. Thank you.